New polls and surveys show that college professors and public school teachers don't want to go back to live classes in the fall because of the virus. These are the same professors and students who are out marching in protest. They are. But they still want to be paid. What if we staged some race riots and acts of arson at our universities and public schools? I bet that would bring them back to campus. Masks and social distancing be damned. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're going to look at the return to campus. While many colleges have announced plans to reopen with students this fall, some professors and an alarming number of high school teachers say it's too dangerous. They won't be teaching on campus anytime soon. You will not endanger my life to go to work. So we've got nurses and doctors and apparently protesters and rioters who are all willing to go to work in the midst of the pandemic, right? Why is it that school teachers who have a less likely chance of getting it, because the younger the children are, the less likely they are to get it, right? Why is it that our public school administrators and our public universities, they don't want to do this? It sums up to me the craven nature of modern academy. And I include all the public schools and all the colleges here. This is not pandering to safety. This is coddling. This is hand-holding. This is infantilization. This is what exactly goes on in universities with issues of race, right? It is completely infantile. We've got the chancellor of my university and the chancellor of all the universities are sending around these deep sentiments, right? Yes. Oh, my goodness, we're hearing that on Instagram somewhere, somebody identifying as a UOW student might have said something that's alarming or disturbing. Oh, no. And you know, it never goes both ways, right? Again, not a single statement regretting what's happened to the African-American property owners in Minneapolis. No word about them from our chancellors and our vice chancellors. No. Just throwing our support infantilely behind these robbers and looters. Not even being willing to draw a distinction as a chancellor of a university, not willing to draw a distinction between a protester and a rioter, because that wouldn't play well to his progressive liberal base. It's just disgusting.
Of course it is. And we're finding out more and more polls are being done basically every week, asking students, asking teachers, what's the likelihood of you coming to campus or back to school, depending on if we're in class or online. And recent stats have found that 65% of students said they're going to go to college if it's in person, and up to 90% of them said, hey, if it's all online, I'm not going.
That's right.
But we have an example of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where faculty are calling for the school's plan to open in the fall dangerous and misguided. An associate professor, Michael Palm, says he is ashamed of the decision and that he plans on continuing to teach his classes online. Now, for the record, he's a media and technology and cultural studies professor, so I guess he's online to begin with. It's not as safer for him anyway to say.
Then pay him less.
Yeah.
Look, you're not driving to campus. You're not using gas. You're not going to be in your office using heat or air conditioning. You're not going to be on campus. Then get paid less. This is as simple as that. You want to have a teach from home scenario. One of the benefits of doing your job from home is that you save on a whole bunch of costs. So just stay home and don't do it. But don't be surprised when you ought to get docked more than professors who actually show up. Yeah. You should be paid less. If you start doing that, they would scream bloody murder. But do it anyway. And again, I want to make this point that, okay, in the name of protecting kids, you are telling them that we should not have live classes. We can't have kids around each other. But you're the same people who are applauding college kids in the streets rioting and carrying on. I mean, this is it. The double speak, the do what I say, don't do what I do behavior of these professors. This is what I mean when I keep using the word infantile. That's what children do. Children who can't realize that when they're advocating for one thing with one hand and completely advocating the opposite with the other hand, and it's all based on politics, it shows you how far down the rabbit hole we are, how lost is critical thinking now, and how completely politicized at the expense of everything else these decisions are. What these professors and high school teachers are doing is they are playing politics. They are not working from the best medical records. They are not working from a place of critical faculty and reasonable thinking. No, they are extremists. And here's another thing. If it weren't Donald Trump who was president, and it was Barack Obama who said to all these college professors, go back and be frontline, education's essential.
Dear
go
colleague.
Back and, dear colleague, right? These professors would be lining up to show how the support, but they know that the lockdowns, and they know that the destruction of the economy, they know that the riots is bad for Trump. That's their primary calculation in all of this, nothing more.
Exactly, and that's why you have another UNC Chapel Hill professor who's an English professor, your favorite.
Sure he is.
Florence Dorer, says that all the data suggests people are going to get sick. That's what she says. Okay, guess
Florence,
what?
Firenze, darling. You do know that people are going to get sick no matter what they do, right?
Stop.
Did I call her darling? That usually offends you.
Oh, no,
you okay?
not that. Just
Firenze.
that people are going to get
People are going to get sick, and it's going to be from all sorts of things that have nothing to do with coronavirus.
They're
and
cats.
Yes. Will some watered-down version of this virus keep... Yeah, absolutely it is. But you know what? You can't stop life. It's funny how you want to wall yourself in, have the same perks and privileges and salary. What are you going to spend it on? I mean, locked in your house that way.
Cats.
Oh, yeah, it was a professor. That's right.
English
professor.
English
cats.
professor.
Yeah, cats
I'm
and
pointing
lesbian erotica
Well,
to hang from your walls.
She says, I guess I just don't understand why we're not staying online until things improve. Pretty much the worst place you can be is online.
Right.
That is honestly the most dangerous place. Let's talk about that for a whole episode. People being online in Twitter warriors and keyboard warriors and just going at it.
We have improved. Things have improved everywhere. It's
Outside.
completely better. I don't think, honey, you're an English professor. I don't think you know what the word improve means. You've got improvement. Every week there's more of it. What you want is a guarantee that you and no one else will ever get sick. You, as a typical liberal, you live in a fairy tale utopia when no one dies, where puppies don't get cancer, no one gets run over by cars, no air conditioners fall on people below, and nobody ever gets sick. That's why your worldview is so entirely, at every level, unrealistic and flat out stupid.
On to the next story, where we're staying along the same topic here. Professors don't want to go back, students don't want to go back, and now we're even giving financial advice for who would be incoming freshmen, saying don't go, take a gap year, save the money. We have a story from financial planner Eric Brotman. He wrote a piece for Forbes and he titled it, "Dear High School Seniors, It's Time to Consider a Gap Year Thanks to COVID-19. He wrote, waiting a year may be the best move in order to ensure you get the traditional college freshman experience, both academically and socially. Taking a gap year may not have been your original plan, but it can present you with a lot of new opportunities." And he suggested getting a job. Getting a job to save some money, or maybe you could shadow a professional in the field you're looking to maybe go in, or you could even just, find out if you even want to go to college.
Number one, why do you need COVID to do this, right?
Exactly.
I mean, this has nothing to do with COVID. You incredibly tortured people out there. We've been recommending this for 10 years. Take a year off. The one piece of advice more than any other I give parents about college: no kid needs college at 17 or 18. Not one of them. There's not a single kid in this country who needs it. Give them a year or two. Let them save some money. Mm-hmm. Have them intern somewhere. Have them get a job and know what it's like to have to save some money. Let them live at home and bank 80% of what they make, so that if they do decide they have to go to college at age 19, or heaven forbid age 20, they're not going to be in debt tens of thousands of dollars to pay for it. The whole thing is bizarre, but okay, that aside, yeah, I agree. Under no circumstances should you go back to the campus as if all you're going to do is online learning.
Correct.
Or, I confirm this, my sister...
Oh, you confirmed
My sister-in-law has a daughter at Baylor University, and what it turns out now that Baylor was actually charging up to $1,500 more for doing online classes. So not only did you get sent off campus, not only did you have to leave campus, if you had rented an apartment from a landlord to be on campus, you're out of luck. You rented it for the whole semester. But because they'd shifted to online courses, the kid was getting charged more. And this is a so-called Christian university, right? But they can get away with it because it's such a highly revered university. But this is what the universities are doing to you. They should be charging you less for online learning. They should be giving you refunds as opposed to jacking up the cost of what they're doing.
But they're not. And even we have a student at Harvard, who says, you know what, kids, take a gap year. Although I think his intentions might be different from the academic pursuits. Jonathan Katzman, an editor with the Harvard Crimson, also wrote a "Dear incoming freshmen, take a gap year." He says, "I have one piece of advice for incoming freshmen. Don't come." yet. Harvard's a wonderful place, and we're excited to have you. But right now, the Harvard experience is a shell of its typical self.
And unfortunately, how much you want to bet for Katzman? That means you're going to be missing out on all the great protest opportunities.
Exactly.
You're going to be wasting out you're going to missing out on the social justice warriors and the indoctrination.
But I do like how he said, don't be fooled by emails sent by the administration. The academic experience on Zoom is fundamentally flawed. No amount of summer planning will fix it. More importantly, this is it. More importantly, the social experience is non-existent. As the chances of an atypical fall seem more and more likely, freshmen are presented with a pretty good alternative: deferring college for a year.
And it's also much easier to do when you're Harvard and you got $40 billion of endowment, right?
The
Harvards of the world could weather that just fine. Despite my suspicion of his motives, I would say he's right. Don't go to college. First of all, nobody needs college right out of high school. No graduating high school senior who's been in school since he was 4 or 5 years old should immediately walk onto a college campus. Correct. That's how you lose them. That bubble, right? From the age of 4 or 5 to the age of 23 or 24, when they know nothing, and some part-time job over the summer to make a little money to spend on textbooks or beer during the semester. It's not the same thing. Nothing insulates them from the fairy tale socialist world of college campuses better than a life outside of campus. Give them the year 17, 18, maybe even 19. Give them those years to establish life, to establish reality, to participate in a world where people are responsible for things, people have obligations, people have money they have to save. Let them do that. So then when they, at age 19 or 20, when they step on college campuses, they're either going to be less likely to get in debt, they'll have more money in the bank, their attitude will have been conditioned to be suspicious of the fairy tale socialist utopia world of your typical college.
But that's exactly what the, academies don't want. But it's really quite interesting because now that I'm, of the older millennials, as I look at my peers and everyone coming forth, the ones who have gone to college obviously have gone the typical academy way, and they don't have jobs, and they basically
they've got
debt, they've got all the issues. The people who decided either to go to a technical college to get a trade or just straight out of high school went to work, who maybe in high school weren't the kids who got the best grades or did that, they are sitting pretty because they have full-time jobs through COVID because they're essential workers. They have money in the bank, and their 401k or whatever the money is that they're going to have for retirement is actually there. They're actually planning a future.
It's never been easier in this country to buy a house. And so you've got 20, 21, 22-year-olds who never went to college with houses.
Oh, yeah.
They may be small houses. They may be fixer-uppers.
Some of them are big houses. Some of my friends, I'm like, how did you get this? But they went to work.
You can't do that with $50,000 of student loan debt. You can't do it.
Your old room is looking good at mom and dad's.
And that's where they all end up in the basement of mom's and dad's house. That's right.
Well, just continuing in our theme, that is, don't go to college next year. We find a survey from Carnegie Dartlet in May. They surveyed 2,800 high school seniors, and they found that 1 in 3, about 33% of high school seniors are going to defer or cancel their admission offer if the college they plan to attend is doing all online in the fall. Meanwhile, 95% of them said, yep, I'm going to college if it's going to be reopened with social distancing in place. We know that California State system has said, we're going to be all online. We'll see if that actually holds through. But UT Austin, University of Texas Austin, they're going to be in person. So it depends on the university system across the whole nation. Now, 2 surveys were actually done by Carnegie Dartlet. First surveyed the students in March, and then they did it again in May. And in the 6 weeks between these surveys, the concerns of students about COVID-19 negatively, impacting their education actually increased significantly. The more they look at it, the worse it looks. So around 3 in 5 respondents said they had a lot of concern or worse, while in March, that they, only it was 1 in 2. So as the time goes on, it's looking more and more negative for them.
That's because we have a culture of scaring people to death.
Yes,
we do it with global warming. We do it with white supremacy. Really? You think we've changed the definition of white supremacy to anybody who doesn't simply become a progressive. But it's not like you've got violent white supremacists all over the place. You just don't have that. I don't care what anybody says. And even the killing of this horrible killing of George Floyd, which was a murder and it was a crime. To what degree was it done because he was black? I mean,
still don't
in the
know.
heat of the moment, you also had black and I believe Asian cops right in the
Yep.
part of the. We never hear this, right? When we attack the cops, the implication is we're attacking white police forces. But police forces have radically diversified over the years, and we don't ever stop to ask that question. But my bigger point is we live in a fear-driven progressive culture, which means you don't argue or rationally explain to people why they should do something and then let them as adults choose. You try to scare them to death. Why am I not surprised that back in March it wasn't such a big deal, that after 2 months of horrible lockdowns when you couldn't leave your house without a mask, right? Even though numbers kept getting better, in spite of all that, we've scared the kids into thinking it's a bigger problem than it is. And yet they're still smart enough to recognize that if it's not going to be in-person classes, we're much less likely to go.
And it's all media driven, because the number of students who said that they had little or no concern had been 16%, and now it's dropping. So they actually have more concern now.
Yep. The better it gets, the more concerned they are.
Yeah, because all they see in their eyes day in and day out is
it's just warning.
Scare.
And you've got the major corporations in this country now who are all on that bandwagon. I can't stand to watch another Burger King commercial or a Pizza Hut commercial. That's not really about hamburgers or pizza. It's about we're with you, right? We're with you in this. And so this time of crisis, heaven forbid that this country have a really dangerous crisis. Something with that 4 or 5 or 10% mortality rate, for God's sake, or that we're actually invaded by a foreign country with the capacity to do it, like China. I don't know where we're going to get the next generation, where that next greatest generation is going to come from. We are the hide under our desk, wear a mask generation we've got coming up here. And the other thing about this, with regards to the schools, is the biggest problem they're going to have should not be the classrooms. It should be the sleeping arrangements. But again, if you don't let any kids into a dorm room except the 2 or 3 that live there, it's much easier to handle that, right?
This is true.
Just keep everybody out of the dorms except the people who live there. And so why can't you social distance that way? If we're supposed to social distance in every other way.
Well, but then if they don't require basically the more bodies they have in there, the more money they get. So the fact that if the university would allow people to not have to live on campus freshman or sophomore year, that's an opportunity that they would be lost.
Yeah, they should waive that immediately.
Of course they should, but they won't.
They don't. No, they don't. And so this is going to be very interesting to see. I mean, the fact that it's early June. Mm-hmm. It's 2 to 3 months before classes start again. And I get that you have to plan for this a little bit, but the trend is going the right way. And again, I go back to my main point. If all you progressives, all you liberals, all of you university types who were cheering on the rioting and the looting, cheering on the protests, suddenly it didn't matter about social distancing, right? You've got the mayor of Minneapolis marching lockstep with telling you that you still can't go to church in places like Madison, Wisconsin. You better be careful if you go to church. We're going to fine you if more than 50 people attend. But if you want to spill into the streets and loot the local Target, suddenly coronavirus doesn't matter. If coronavirus isn't that big of a deal for the protesters, it shouldn't be for our campuses in the fall either, unless they want to burn those campuses down.
Now it is time for some real education. The L'uomo Vitruviano, also known as the Vitruvian Man, is one of Leonardo da Vinci's most recognized images, even though most people can't name the artist and have trouble identifying the purpose of the figure. Drawn about the year 1490, the picture seeks to portray the exact proportions of the human body as they were theorized by the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius. Today, this sublime reflection on the body of man in the context of the broader world can be found in the Gallery dell'Academy in Venice, Italy.
Yeah, and we've talked before about, if Mike throw the Vitruvian Man up there, very famous symbol. We've talked before about the Renaissance being that period from about 1400 all the way through about 1650 being just a complete rediscovery of the body. We've looked at anatomical pictures before, how the science of human dissection was really born in this period, and they were beginning to rethink how we looked at bodies, right? And so what you've got here is Da Vinci, and you got the circle and the square. Notice the geometric figures. Vitruvius was an ancient Roman architect who was responsible for really a lot of leap forwards. Think of buildings like the Pantheon. which we covered for the Dr. Duke Show, and the kind of architectural knowledge that it took to be able to build things like that. And so in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, Vitruvius was considered the most important architect of the ancient world. Da Vinci, interesting enough, there's a bit of a debate about this. It's not so much that Da Vinci actually borrowed or theorized completely what Vitruvius was doing. He actually challenges it in some ways and makes adjustments to it. But if you go back to the figure itself, you can see here that you have it's concerned with proportion. You've got you can see at the very bottom the circle, right? That circumferizes the Vitruvian man, in which he makes his poses here, trying to measure. Da Vinci was the ideal proportions for a human body in the same way you might do so with a building. And this is also, I should point out to you, the macrocosm, microcosm thing, right? Going all the way back to the Greeks, all the way through Christian culture, post-Christ, you have this idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The macrocosm is the big world that surrounds us. It is the universe proper. The microcosm, the little world, cosm means world. Here you got the big world and you've got the microcosm. It was believed by people, the ancient Greeks and Romans, and it was believed by the Christians too, that the human body was the microcosm of the macrocosm. In other words, that if you look at what was in the macrocosm, look at what's in the universe, you see things like water and fire and air, all of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air. You think about what we believe the whole world was created out of, those four elements. Well, you find them in the microcosm. The microcosm, everything you can find in nature, you can find in the human body. So you've got air, which is breath. You've got fire, which is the soul. The body is made of earth. There's much liquid in the body. So when they started dissecting bodies, they actually dissected them on the premise that what you will find in the body is what you would find in the world generally, and that's what they found, right? It's interesting at this period, too, that when they were dissecting bodies, and I mentioned this alongside the Vitruvian man, because like Michelangelo, Da Vinci was quite a dissector of bodies. A long history for him of dissecting bodies and to find out how anatomical images work. But here in the microcosm, that you have that image, right? That when this is the era that when the Europeans were exploring the world, right? They were colonizing. They were going to different places in the world that many people said didn't even exist, and they were giving place names. They were naming things that, from their perspective, had no name. Well, that's exactly what was happening with the body. The same time that Drake and Vespucci were Columbus, they were looking around the world and naming things that, from their perspective, hadn't been named before. These anatomists were cutting into bodies, finding things and naming them, right? So there's a parallel in what was going on with the microcosm, the body of man, and cutting it open, and these pioneering doctors, surgeons, naming things for the first time, and what people like Columbus were doing. And Vitruvian man there gives you that intersection between the macrocosm and the microcosm, between the vastness of the universe we inhabit and man as the measure of that universe. There's nothing inside man that you cannot find in the world, and vice versa. The world was made for man, according to the book of Genesis. It all fit together quite nicely.
Oakley dokley. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a message on social media. Now, let's wrap things up with our fun fact of the day. College kids taking a gap year kind of made me think of Mind the Gap in London, where the underground tube system has about 49 abandoned stations. So there are a few gaps.
When I first heard the word gap year, I imagined tens of thousands of college kids folding cheap khaki pants, right? And cable knit sweaters. I guess it wasn't that kind of gap either. And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.